Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm here to say, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm about to give you the perfect formula, the answer to everything, a realistic way to play every single new board game. So, you're welcome. Mostly, not really, not actually getting to play every new board game, in fact only a very, very small percentage of them, and not necessarily a perfect answer, more like kind of information-ish, so maybe let's hold back the you're welcome until the end of this video. I brought papers, I brought pens that will hopefully show up on camera, I have formulas that we're going to go over. This is science about how to play all the board games. I also need somewhere better to write. So now we have Great Western Trail, Argentina, where we're going to write as we go through things. So here's the deal, okay? This is something I've talked about before. I believe in numbers. I believe in numbers around the hobby in general, and part of those numbers affect how I engage with, well, the things I play, the games I play, new games, old games, all of those things. And some of the things I'm going to talk about in this video have been mentioned in different videos over the course of the years. I assume you've watched every single one of my videos, so you'll have part of the information, obviously. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into this, starting off with the fact that in 2022, more than 6,000 board games came out. Okay, more than 6,000 board games. This is a large number of board games. This is according to the Board Game Geek database. They have a little tool called Advanced Search. You can go ahead and you can plug things in. Sometimes you have to be creative because they limit results to 5,000. Sometimes you have to be creative as far as how to search to actually get the answer. Fun fact, you can search by rating. So you can say, I want to see everything between rating 1 and 5 and everything between 5 and 10. And between those, you'll get all the answers, all the results. And over 6,000 games came out in 2022. Now, if you filter out expansions, because, I mean, honestly, you probably should have expansions in the mix, but the reason I filter out expansions is tricky. I'll explain in a second. But if you filter out expansions, then you're down to 4,700 games that came out in 2022. Now, the reason I filter out expansions is because, in theory, I do want to try new expansions. In theory, those should count towards the new things I play. The tricky part is if you include expansions, you end up getting a lot of kind of adjacent things, like even just promos or dozens of things that don't actually matter as much to me. So I'll filter out expansions, and this formula already starts becoming imperfect as a result. But close enough. Now, 4,700 games is a lot of games, but I expect that you don't want to play all those games. I assume that you don't want to play all those games because that would make you a crazy person. And this video is not a video for crazy people. It's a video for people who want formulas about how to play the exact number of new games that they want to every single year. That's not crazy. That's just board gaming. But with that, so we're down to 4,700 games. We're making progress. But let's move it down a notch, okay? Because you're not crazy, obviously. We just covered this. And so if you're not crazy, let's assume that you want to play only good games. And let's assume that you need a certain amount of popularity behind a game, because if one person rating a game a 10 doth not a great game make. And so let's go ahead and apply to this advanced search games in 2022, excluding expansions, between a 7.5 and higher, and with at least 100 ratings behind the game. And now we're down to 223 titles. 223 titles. We're making progress. This is so much easier than it was a second ago when we had 6,000 new titles. That's an insane number of games. Who's playing that? Now, 223 new games every single year. Every single one of you can do that. But that said, let's go ahead and back this. Now, why 7.5 and why 100 ratings? Because you have to go somewhere. Is there going to be a great game that's rated a 7.3 that you would have rated a 9.5? Absolutely, you're going to miss that. But also, you have a life, you have a job, you have responsibilities, you can't afford to get fired again, and so we're going to make certain exclusions and run the risk that certain things will be missed. This is all okay. This is all okay. The good news is you go to board game conventions, that 7.2, that really is a 9.5, your best friend knows your taste, they're going to introduce you to it, it's going to throw off the calculation, it's going to mess things up, but you will find that game. Or you won't, and you'll never know otherwise. So again, we're all doing fine here. And why 100 ratings? Because I could pick any arbitrary number. I figured if a game is popular enough that it has 100 people who rated it, then it's probably semi in the range of something worth paying attention to. If we have 12 people who rated it high enough to be a 7.8, do we really care? I don't. Again, see the previous notes and rambling about that 7.2 that's really a 9.5 for you. You'll find these games, you have good friends, or you'll never know what you're missing. But we're down to 223 titles that came out in 2022 that you should have 100% partially be playing. But let's whittle that number down further, because the next number I have over here is the personal interest in any title. Just because 223 games came out in 2022 that were rated a 7.5 or higher, excluding expansions that have at least 100 ratings, does not mean that you are interested in all those games. I don't know about you, but for me, any title that's any board game title that's like 1914, the War of the War of the Ring, I'd like 1914, the War of the Rhine in Italy, any game that has a title like that, I'm just not playing. It's not my genre. I can't think of a single game except for 1812. 1812 was pretty good. So was 1775. That was also pretty good. So there's sometimes R dates attached to games. What's it called? Anno 1800. That's a date in a game. So sometimes things will confuse you. But again, you can kind of whittle things out if you go with personal interest and try to exclude those. Now, for me personally, I went through all 223 of these titles that came out in 2022 that are rated a 7.5, that have 100 ratings. I went through every single one of them and looked over the list and whittled down the list for my personal interest. Why? For science. For this video, because I wanted to actually have chaos and craziness and numbers and answers, and I got down to 151 titles that I was interested in. From those 223, just by excluding things that I'm like, I don't care if I never play that. Are you a 7.5? Yes. Did someone else give you, is your average rating possibly an 8.1 and there's 117 people who love you? Possibly. Is it a game that I in any way am going to put on my priority list? Not in the slightest. So I'm down to 151 titles in this list. Okay. Now, to be clear, just for transparency's sake, if I played the game and did not like it, I still included it if it was something that I had an interest in once upon a time, because again, for science, I can't use my new knowledge to exclude what I would have wanted to play. So 151 titles in 2022 would be my personal number. Your number might be different. And now where's the math comes in. This is the part where we get to the math, which is obviously the part you've been so excited and waiting for so desperately, because we all like to pop on videos in our spare time to do more math. Excuse me while I grab my seltzer that's off to the side. I'm going to just wander off over here. We have some seltzer, which I have not finished. We have a coaster, a Too Many Bones coaster with the number 5 behind it. The number 5 has a special meaning to this video. It doesn't. It doesn't. Anyways, so moving onwards, we now have 151 titles, and this is where the equation comes in, because we have 3 variables. We have X, we have Y, and we have Z. Z. I live in the US now. We have Z. We have X, we have Y, we have Z. So, X is the following. X is the number of new games that come out each year that you want to play. In this case, for 2022, that's 151. For me, your number might be slightly different, okay? And it excludes the unknowns. It excludes that 7.2 that's really a 9.5 for me that I'll never know about. So X to me is 151. We're going to get to the math soon. Y is the percentage of your plays that you are comfortable being new games versus repeat plays. In other words, sure, you can play 151 games every single year, but is that why you're here? Is that why you're in this hobby? Are you in the hobbies to constantly churn through every single new thing and never actually settle on a gaming experience that you love? Is your heart so cold and dead inside that you can play something, have a good time, and you're like, I will never touch you again? I knew a friend like that, by the way. I had a friend, once upon a time, I had a friend who was in my gaming group, that his rule was, invite me when we're playing a new game, do not invite me no matter what else otherwise. And he never broke that rule. For a year, he was in our gaming group, and he only ever wanted to play new games. He enjoyed them. He found games he loved. He would never play a game twice. I don't know why. I never understood it. I asked him multiple times, and he could never really explain it. Like, I understand the person who's like, I mostly like chasing new experiences. I understand that person. The person who's like, I will never play a game a second time. That is an intentional level of decision making. I mean, props to him for owning what he wants, but it still bothers me. It still bothers me. That one person aside, who's almost certainly not watching this video, but that one person aside, most of you, I assume, do want to play some of the games you fell in love with already. You want to play those games again because you fell in love with them, you love this hobby, you play Lost Ruins of Arnak and it's amazing, or you hate Lost Ruins of Arnak because that's just like point managing, and Dune Imperium is where it's at. Or insert whatever game you fell in love with, I don't care. The point is you want to play them again. So what percentage of your plays are you comfortable being devoted to chasing the new versus engaging in the thing you already know you like? That's the question you have to figure out for yourself, although this formula is going to help you do that. And then the third variable you have is Z, or Z for my Canadian friends. Z is the amount of plays you get in per year. Okay, that's what you have, the amount of plays you get in per year. And if you have any 2 of those 3 variables, you have your answer. You just need any 2. You can't do this with just one. If you ever played with basic algebra and people ask what's algebra good for, this is what algebra is good for. Figuring out how many new games you can play every single year. That's the answer. The next time someone says, why do you need algebra? So you can know how to play new board games. Also to be good at the board games. And math does help being good at board games. It often gives you that insightfulness of being able to calculate, well, if I take that loan, I'll be paying interest at, 2 per round, but then also I can go ahead and convert that to this, which if I can multiply that by that, and you start doing those whole little formulas in your head, and it's intuitive math, because sometimes you're actually mathing things out, otherwise you're engaging in intuitive math, where you can kind of see the puzzle and get a sense of what makes sense. So math is good, not just for the craziness that is this video, but for just being good at board games in general. which is what you knew back in high school when you were asking why you need algebra. Anyways, so if you have any two of those variables, x, y, and z, the new games that you want to play each year, the percentage of your plays that you're comfortable being new games, and the amount of plays you have per year, if you give me any two of those, you have a formula. And this is where we dive into the math in the paper. I've had a prop this entire time. It's better well use it. So let's go ahead. My handwriting's terrible, by the way. Should have warned you that earlier on. Let's pretend for a second that, for example, let's say you want to see how many plays you need per year. How many games do you need to play per year to fulfill those other variables? So for example, I'm going to go ahead. I don't have a top camera here, which I should have had a top camera on so you could see me writing horribly. So I'm just going to write things down. We've got a blank piece of paper. This is not a magic trick. It's starting to feel like a magic trick. But we're going to go ahead and write that x, the formula for this is x divided by y equals z. So we have x, okay, divided by y equals z. That's your formula over here. I don't know how well this is going to show up over here. X divided by y equals z. That's our starting formula. In this case, x equals 151, we said. That's the number of new plays. 151. Y equals 0.25, okay, 0.25 equals a magical number. So when we have 151, the number 151, the number of new games you want to play per year, divided by 0.25, not times 0.25, divided by 0.25 equals 604 plays. 604 plays is the answer. So if I want to play 151 new games and I only want 25% of my new plays to be 25% of my plays to be new games, then I get 604 plays per year is what I need. Now factor in, this is where you have to be a little complicated. Okay, this is where I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole, but that does factor in. If you find a new game and you want to play it twice, that counts as two of your... The question is, how do you want to count that? Do you want to count that as new plays, or as one of those new plays, and the second one is already diving into a game that you liked? That's a question you have to figure out. I don't want to make the formula too complicated, so we're going to let you decide where that goes. Because effectively, if you want to play each of those 151 games twice, and you want to count both of those two plays as new plays, then that doubles your number to 302, right? Just working with me on that. That's how it works. Or you can say, in my case, I'm comfortable saying, you know what? Well, it depends. In my case, it's more complicated, because if I'm playing a game a second time because I liked it, I'm fine counting it as my experiencing the thing I love. Versus if I'm playing the second time because I'm reviewing it, less comfortable with that. But either way, 604 plays per year. If you want to play 151 new games per year, and you have 25% is your ideal ratio, then you're going to need 604. You're going to need to play at least 604 plays per year to be able to achieve that. X divided by y equals z, assuming you have x and y. Although, what happens if you want to see what percentage you can get away with? Well, then you need x and z. You need the number of new plays, and you need the number of plays per year you have. In my case, that's going to be x divided by z equals y. So we have x divided by z equals y is your second formula. X divided by y equals x divided by z equals y. In this case, x equals 151, okay? Divided by z, so I'm going to use my numbers for last year. In 2022, I played 1,280 games. I had 1,280 logged plays. So we have 151 divided by 1,281. This is where my math's not as good, so you need to give me a second over here. Calculator, dun 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 dun. That's the calendar, not the calculator. Calculator. 151 divided by 1,280 equals 11.7. Okay, we got 11.7, or 0.117 technically. Depends if you're counting percentages. So equals 11.7%. In other words, for me, if I want to play 151 new games per year and I'm getting 1,280 log plays, then that means my ratio, my percentage, is going to be 11.7% of my plays are logged games. Honestly, this is what I don't care about, because I'm kind of more intrigued with it. How many games can I get away with playing, or how many plays do I have to have? Those are the numbers I'm intrigued. The percentage to me is more of a factor I'm going to plug in. It's not the output that I want. Does that make sense? But I want to give you all the formulas, okay? We're going to make t-shirts out of this, okay? We're going to have people walking around with t-shirts that basically say on them, I don't know, new games I want to play divided by my play percentage equals total plays. Okay, we're just going to have people walking around looking like geeks. That's the goal of this video. The last formula we have at our disposal, the last formula is if you want to see how many new games you can play per year, then you need those other two variables. Again, this is algebra. You need two variables to get to a third. And so if x, this formula over here is z times y equals x. So z times y equals x. That's your formula over here. Z times y equals x over there. And to that end, z for me, we already established, z is 1,280 plays times y, which is 25%. I think we said 25%. Yep, that's the number. That's my personal ratio that I'm comfortable with. I want to play the old games. I want to dive into the games I know I love, but I also want to try and chase new games. I like it. I like the experience of chasing new things and finding which ones get sorted into the category of games I love and which ones I move on from. And I'm comfortable that I experience something new and I don't need to experience it again, and sometimes don't want to experience it again. So 1280 times 25%, that's 320 equals 320. So that means I can afford, with the amount of plays I get per year in 2022 and the percentage that I'm comfortable with, I can play 320 new plays. That's how much I could. Fun fact, in 2022 I actually didn't get the ratio I wanted because I had a game a day challenge and I played 380 new games. So if I did, ironically now I knew that other formula, so if I played 380 new games divided by 1280, okay, equals that's the other formula. So 320 divided by 1280, which again, that math I can't do. A 380 divided by, let's clear over here, clear, 380 divided by 1280. So I got a 29.6% ratio in 2022, 29.6, which honestly, considering the fact that I had a specific goal that was kind of counter to my other goals, that does make sense. And that's your formula. There you go. That's the answer over here. If you are sitting there and you're looking at the waves of new games coming out every single year, and you're trying to figure out, is this useful, by the way? Is any of this useful? I have no idea. It depends on how geeky you are. But is any of this useful? It can be. Everyone's going to have a different number of what they want. But if you're sitting there and if you're looking at people who just came home from a convention and they played 17 new games, you're looking at the BGG hotness list and you're seeing all these games you want to play, you need to figure out for yourself, what is the amount of new games you're comfortable playing every single year, and then fitting it into your overall gaming budget, not money budget, time, effort, and energy budget. Everyone's going to have a different number. You might be someone who only plays 50 new games a year. And if you only play, not 50 new games, 50 games a year. If you only get 50 plays in a year, you just have to make realistic determinations of what you can allow yourself within that. So for example, using those budgets, if you play 50 games a year, okay, 50 games a year, and then you want to go ahead and, I don't know, play, and you want 25% of your plays, that's a number for me, you could use your own whatever number you want, but if you're comfortable with 25% of your plays going towards new games, that means you can only afford to let yourself play 12 and a half new games per year. And that's freeing. It's freeing because walking in with that knowledge helps guide your actions. It helps guide what you're going to do and also what you buy. If you want those numbers, if you have 50, you have 12, and those are the numbers you have, then don't hunt down 35 new games a year that you'll never play. Work within the reality that you actually have and define that reality using these ever so complicated, ever so amazing mathematical formulas of how to play games. Not how to play games, of how many games to play and what ratios you want. Those pieces of information are useful if you know yourself. Everyone's going to have different ways that they engage with the hobby. And the good news is, speaking for myself at least, also, the good news is you can filter this further and further. You can say, I only want games that are 7.8 and above. That will drastically reduce it. If you're willing to wait until there's a certain critical mass of opinions around a title, you will avoid so much garbage out there. And garbage doesn't even mean garbage. That's not fair. Garbage just means good games that are just good games. There are a lot of good games that are just good games in existence. There are so many. I play a lot of games every year. I played 380 games last year. I'm on track to be around 330, 340 new games this year. And that's without specifically trying, just through the nature of me just playing games. And from those games, I find every year there's like 5 to 10 games that really stand out as being the best of the best for me. The ones that I'm like in love with and I enjoy so much. And there's around another, 20, 30 or so that are good games that will rotate into my collection for various degrees of time. And I'm always happy to play them, but they might also leave because limited time, effort, and energy. The mathematical equation we have not dove down into is, if you're adding 10 games a year to your collection, how long can your numbers and ratios work out? Because effectively, if you add games to your collection, I should do more mathematical formulas, I'm not going to right now because I didn't prepare for them, but if you're adding more games to your collection every single year, then either you have to be increasing the amount of plays you have, or your ratio of how much time gets spent on any individual title will go down. If you start with a collection of 50 games and you play 50 plays a year, on average your collection is getting 1 play per game per year. But if you add 10 games and you don't increase your plays, well suddenly you now have 60 games and you're playing 50 times. On average your games are getting played, I don't know what the math on that is, 10, 5, 6, 80 2%, 80, I think it's like 82%, right? That's roughly what it is. So each game is getting 0.82 plays per year. Your average is going down. So that's one of the reasons I frequently get rid of games, because I want to spend my time on the best possible games I can. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I play games again and again, and I love them, and I dive back into them. Expeditions is a recent new find for me. DEI is a new find for me. These are games I've played a dozen times. Not yet a dozen. Just shy of 10 on each, I think. But these are games I've played a lot this year because I really enjoy them and I really like them. But that means that something else that I'm spending less time, effort, and energy on needs to leave. Something else that has captured my heart a little bit less. And sometimes there are things that captured my heart once upon a time. Sometimes there are games that I loved, but things change and things move on and your collection shifts and rotates. And every single year I do spend more time playing games, but there is a cap on that. There's a practical cap on how much time you can ever spend playing games. At a certain point, your entire life is playing games and nothing else is there. And that's the cap. That's the cap. You gotta sleep somewhere. You have to do, like, sleep is non-negotiable. Jobs, you can make board games your job, arguably. It's not the easiest. But there is a cap. There is a practical cap on how much you can spend, how much time you can spend playing games. That's it. There's your formula. If you wanted to know how many new games you can reasonably justify playing, or if you want to figure out the percentage you work, or if you want to figure out how many plays you need, plug in any two of those numbers, and you have your formula. I'll include the formulas in the links down below, on the off chance you specifically care. That was some stuff falling down on the side there. That's your video. That is, almost recovered from that. That is your formula of a realistic way to play everything you ever wanted to, assuming you're willing to make the math work. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.